You are watching Bengals Breakdown by Chat Sports, and I am your host, Stone Shields. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on a Monday afternoon. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking about a Trey Hendrickson trade idea that the 33rd team came up with. Going to be breaking that down, and I have my thoughts on that as well. Also, the second half of today's show, we're going to be talking about Cincinnati potentially trading out of that number 17 overall spot in the 2025 NFL Draft. The Athletic had a proposal that they put out there about Cincinnati moving back in the draft, so we're going to discuss that, and I have my thoughts on that as well. So a lot of trade talk coming your guys' way on this edition of Bengals Breakdown. Now, I know we're going to discuss trading Trey Hendrickson, but if you want the Cincinnati Bengals to not do that and instead extend him, like today's video for me right now. Trying to get the 500 likes here on this video, set a bit of a record here in the month of March, so we would really appreciate if you guys helped us out. Hit that thumbs up icon. Really does help us out, makes the bosses happy, and allows us to bring more Bengals content to you guys. So like the video for me if you want the Bengals to extend Trey Hendrickson. All right, so like I was saying, the 33rd team dropped 4 trades that they want to see before the draft, and one of the trades that they brought up was Cincinnati sending Trey Hendrickson to another team. And just of note, the last time we were this close to the NFL draft starting, and there had been 0 trades involving a first-round pick, was 1993. So kind of unprecedented, really, when you talk about around the league, not a first-round pick being moved to this point. It kind of has been a quiet offseason, I would say, as far as NFL standards go. I think free agency kind of was a bummer, right? And partially because, the expectations for NFL free agency are so high, because usually it's fireworks all over the place, right? But this time around, really haven't seen much, and we also haven't seen a team trade a first-round pick. Kind of feels like it's only a matter of time before something goes down before the draft next month. We'll see if perhaps Cincinnati shakes up the league, moving off a star in Trey Hendrickson. So this is what the idea that the 33rd team proposed involving Trey Hendrickson going to the Green Bay Packers. Cincinnati would receive a 2025 first-round pick, number 23 overall. Keep in mind they would still be able to hold on to their number 17 overall selection. Also would be getting a 5th-round pick from Green Bay at number 159 overall, and fast forward to the 2026 NFL Draft, also would be getting a 2nd-round pick. So when you talk about this trade idea from the 33rd team, that is an absolute haul for Trey Hendrickson, who, of course, is 30 years of age. We're going to kind of break down my thoughts here in a minute, but I do want to get to what Ian Valentino had to say for the 33rd team, and here is what he wrote. He said, "Seeing Myles Garrett cash in with $40 million per year already cost Cincinnati more than what they surely wanted with Jamar Chase, and their decision to also keep T. Higgins further tightened their financial belt. While the idea of losing one of the league's premier pass rushers seems crazy, there's a line of thinking that Cincinnati's defense has been bad with Hendrickson, so paying him $35 million or more won't fix the unit. Trading him for a major haul can do as much good or more if they hit. The Packers are an ideal landing spot for a top-notch defensive player. This is a young roster with only a few notable needs, so spending 2 picks in this class won't sting. They've also managed their cap well and have the future flexibility needed to justify adding a top pass rusher contract to its books." I think that's a lot of good stuff there from Ian Valentino. We will get to my thoughts here in a moment, but first, I want to hear from you guys. Would you do that Trey Hendrickson trade that you see right up there on your screen pitched by the 33rd team? Type Y for yes or N for no. It is the pinned comment of today's video, so if that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. You can ignore it, take advantage of it, get down in the comments, let us know what you think. All right, look, I have always been of the mindset of Cincinnati needs to keep Trey Hendrickson, but it would be silly to turn this one down. That is a complete haul when you're talking about that proposal there from the 33rd team, what Green Bay would give Cincinnati in this trade. Now, Trey Hendrickson has been elite, right? Really ever since you got him from New Orleans, and seemingly has just gotten a little bit better each and every year. Truly, probably the best free agent you have acquired in franchise history when you're talking about Trey Hendrickson. I don't think that is hyperbolic really whatsoever when you say it, but your defense has stunk the past couple of years with Trey Hendrickson producing at such a high level. 17.5 sacks back-to-back seasons, and you were one of the worst, if not the worst defense in the National Football League last year, and teams don't want to give up a first rounder for Trey Hendrickson. I think Cincinnati and Hendrickson and his camp have kind of found that out here in recent days and weeks, right? He was looking for permission to seek a trade, and then he kind of went out there with his agent. They were feeling things around, and when you hear from teams around the league, just from the reports, right, it doesn't seem like a team is ready to give up a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson because, of course, it wouldn't just be a first-round pick that they have to give up. They would also have to go out there and make him one of the highest-paid edge rushers in the National Football League, and he's 30 years of age, so obviously there is some risk when it comes to doing that. So that part does seem to be a bit unrealistic, and I have no interest in trading him for less than a first-rounder, right? So when I look at this idea, I go, yeah, I absolutely would do this when you talk about the haul in which you can get for Trey Hendrickson in this proposal from the 33rd team. But if it's not a first rounder, I don't have any interest in doing that. And I think realistically, I don't know if a team is going to get desperate enough to where they move off a first round pick for Trey Hendrickson. So kind of to wrap that up, I absolutely would do that proposal. And that's nothing against Trey Hendrickson, right? I have always been a Trey Hendrickson guy. I want him to stick around. But if you have an opportunity to get a haul like that and not have to, pay a guy that is, obviously 30 years of age and a guy that's, been on your defense for the past couple of years and that your defense as a whole hasn't been very good, and you're able to get that kind of, package back from a team, I would do it. But it doesn't seem like a team in the NFL is willing to kind of give up that kind of a haul for Trey Hendrickson. But we'll see if anything changes between now and the NFL draft. More trade talk around the corner, but do want to give a shout-out to our friends over at Fanatics. Let you guys know that Bengals sideline hats are out. They are available right now. That is chatsports.com/Bengals sideline. They've got all kinds of cool sideline hats up there at Fanatics. I've got a few of these myself. Love rocking them all off-season long. Obviously, it is the off-season, but that doesn't mean you can't get some Cincinnati Bengals swag, courtesy of our friends over at Fanatics. We'll get that link in the comment section and the description of today's show. One more time for you guys. That's chatsports.com/Bengals sideline. All right, we haven't really talked about this as a possibility much here on the channel. What if Cincinnati moves off that number 17 overall selection? Now, Bengals aren't a, trading team, right? We certainly have seen that, but I will say I do think there is more probability, a more likely chance that they move off do a trade in the draft as opposed to doing something, before the free agency deadline or making kind of a splashy move. I could see them trading in the draft a little bit more than I could see them just kind of making a trade during the offseason involving a player and having nothing to do with the NFL draft. But Ben Standig of The Athletic has the Bengals trading down from number 17 in his latest mock draft that came out earlier this morning. This is what Standig had to say, and I also think there's really good points in this article as well. He wrote, trading down for more picks, the Bengals have 6, helps the front office add more rookie contract talent to offset the significant spending for Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and possibly Trey Hendrickson. This selection must go for defense, whether the line or secondary. The safety position fell apart following Jesse Bates' departure in 2023. More on that in a second. But should the Bengals consider trading back in the NFL draft? Again, something we really haven't talked a ton about here on the show. Let me know what you guys think. Should they consider making a move back from number 17? Type A for yes or B for no for me in the comments of today's video. So this is kind of the trade that came along with the proposal from The Athletic. The Bengals would receive the number 22 overall pick from the Los Angeles Chargers, so they'd be sending 17 for number 22, but they also get some additional picks. They get a 4th and a 6th round pick in this year's draft here in 2025, 125 overall and 214 overall. And additionally, they're going to get a 3rd round pick next year while sending a 4th round pick to Los Angeles next year. So that's kind of the breakdown of this trade, and really just kind of how that looks right there. I would be very interested in doing something like this. Here is who he mocked to the Los Angeles Chargers at number 17 overall. He had Los Angeles taking Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan there at that number 17 pick, who, people have linked him to the Bengals in the past this offseason, and people say that he is one of the top, if not the top, corner in this draft. So you kind of have a reunion there with Harbaugh in L.A. He, of course, coached Will Johnson when they won a national title in 2023. And a couple of picks later, at number 22, he has the Bengals taking Malachi Starks, who, of course, if you watch the program much, you know how high I am on him. So they trade back a couple of spots, still get a really good player in Malachi Starks. Now, I kind of want to go back to this. I would be surprised if Cincinnati made a move. Again, it's not something they typically do as an organization. We're not talking about, Philly or some team that is San Francisco or somebody that has, history of being aggressive. They kind of just like sit here and say, what are our picks? We got 6 of these. All right, we'll go out there and we'll pick at those spots and see if we can't get really good players. That's typically their mindset. So I'd be surprised if they made a move, but I absolutely love this. And again, we haven't talked about this a bunch. You have an opportunity to potentially get more picks, and you're only going to, trade back a few spots. I don't want to trade out of the first round, but trading back to the end of the first round, sure, I don't really have an issue with that. And I also think in this particular situation, Cincinnati gets the better player, right? I would rather have Malachi Starks on my football team than Will Johnson. I know a lot of people out there would disagree with that, but I just think Malachi Starks is more ready to go right now, ready to be really good in this league as opposed to Will Johnson. Obviously, there's no guarantee that those guys would be there, right? Again, this is a mock draft, but the idea I still think kind of stands and has a very good, meaning behind it, and what Cincinnati could potentially do by moving back in the draft. They do need to find a way to get more picks, in my opinion. We talk about how important this draft is for the Cincinnati Bengals. They only have 6 right now, and they're going to need to bring in some guys and give themselves more shots, right? Because, the likelihood of hitting on all 6 picks isn't very high, but if you add more picks, and then, you can have a better chance at least hitting on a few of them. That's something that Duke Tobin, Zach Taylor, and the whole staff desperately needs to do, and I think that would be put themselves in a good position to perhaps do that if they were able to get more picks in this year's draft. But I think that, people should be talking about that a little bit more when you talk about the Cincinnati Bengals moving back a little bit, not trading out of the first round, moving back a few spots, getting some extra picks for later in the draft could perhaps be a good move for Cincinnati. The way I would look at it is if I'm the Bengals, you got a couple of players and you sit there at 17 and say, all right, if one of these guys is there, we take him because we absolutely love him. But if the guys that you love aren't on your board when it's time for you to pick, you should explore moving back into the first round because I still think there's some players that will be available at the end of the first round that really could have an impact on your football team and isn't going to be significantly worse per se than somebody that you would pick at 17 overall. For more draft coverage, for more trade rumors, for more all things Bengals, you've come to the right place here at Bengals Breakdown by Chat Sports. Don't miss out on any of our content. Hit that sub button for me, youtube.com/BengalsTV.